Hi, welcome to Straight Talk About God video. I'm Jack, and today's subject is connected to the Lost Tribes teaching, and we're going to look in detail in an artifact called Behistun Rock. It's over in Iran, actually, and at some of the Assyrian Royal Library tablets. Very interesting stuff, and extremely important to the history of not only the Israelites, but the whole world. Okay, the whole world. So we'll take a quick look at the history of the Israelites, their conquering and deportation and so forth, and then we'll get into more detail and show you some pictures on Behistun Rock and what significance it holds. And then we'll take a look at the Assyrian tablets. So, who are the Goths, the Franks, the Sumerians, the Scythians, the Vikings, the Germans? Are they all different groups? Or is it possible that they're all part of a much larger group called the House of Israel, nation, House of Israel? Take a look at the history first, just for some background, okay? Under Saul and mainly David, the 12 tribe nation of Israel came together and was together for a long time. David ruled for 40 years, lots of prosperity and everything, and then Solomon ruled after him. But when Solomon dies, his son tells those northern 10 tribes who contained the nobility of the nation of Israel, the nobility, because Joseph got the birthright, except the right to rule, to be king. He got the whole birthright. His kids are the nobility of the nation of Israel, the 12 tribe nation of Israel. And his major recipient is his second-born son, Ephraim. He heads up Israel as the nobility. They get all the good stuff, all the blessings and everything. But Solomon's son, he says, I'm going to put more taxes on you guys. And they say, no, you're not. We're out of here. And they split around 925 or somewhere like that. And they're apart for 200 years. And they war against each other and with each other for other people and stuff all for that time. And the population grows and grows and grows until in about 45, Assyria, which is then the world empire, Assyria comes and conquers in successive waves in 3 or 4 different kings ruling all of the land of Israel, not the land of Israel, but the house of Israel, the nation, and many, many thousands of Judahites, people from the tribe of, not the tribe, but the nation of Judah down below. So you got the 10-tribe Israel nation and the 2-tribe Judah nation. For 200 years, Assyria comes and takes away the house of Israel. Now here's how that looks on the map. You can look it up in Judges and Chronicles, and it'll tell you the names that I'm going to mention here. You can do your own research on this. But down here in Israel, okay, Assyria comes. Assyria is the ruler of the Fertile Crescent. The Assyrian Empire mainly centers around the Fertile Crescent. See, there's a big line of mountains here and up around the top, and then the Mediterranean Sea. So they take these guys away to, you can see this or not, Hala and Haber and the river Gozan. That's what it says in the Bible. So these people are installed right here in this area. But notice who's down here. See, the Medes and Persia are down below. Okay? Well, they're pretty feisty people, see? And Assyria, when they conquer, they're the first ones in history that ever did this. They take the people they conquer, they don't leave them in their homes, they take them away. And when they took all of these millions, not a couple of 100,000, millions of Israelites away, put them up here as a buffer state. Millions of people are up in here. If the Medes and the Persians ever want to come up and go against Assyria, I'll show you in a minute. There's a good topographical map that shows the extent of this mountain range here. The best place to go through that mountain range to get to the other side is up around the top. I mean, if you're an army, you know. So if the Medes want to get after Assyria, they're going to have to go through these thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, actually, of Israelites. Pretty good defensive strategy, okay? Eventually, wave after wave comes as they conquer over 25 years, and some of them go east all the way to Japan. Yeah, all the way to Japan. This is small groups now, okay? And some of them, a large group goes around the back end, the east end of the Caspian Sea, and become the Saka and the Sarmatians. Eventually they come around the top and go west also. But another large group from this area goes up around the top of that mountain and over here under the Black Sea. Okay? And they become, in the Greek language, they come the Gamirioi. Gamirioi. Well, Gamirioi becomes the English word Sumerian. See? They were the Sumerians. Okay? And just briefly, a very large group of these people, these Israelites, go up eventually through the Caucasus Mountains and into above the Black Sea into a place called Arsareth, and they become the Scythians. This is the Scythia of history, but it isn't a land that's named and then they come to it. The land is called that because of them. Scythian. Scythian really is another name for wanderer. They lived somewhat of a nomadic existence. So that's the general conquering of Assyria. While they're up in that area, what happens when people lose their homes? What happens when people lose their jobs, their vineyard, their flocks, well, maybe not all their flocks, but their pasture land, their farms? What do you do? What have poor people in that situation done all through history? They join the army. Okay? They join the army. Right, so they become mercenaries. And large bands of mercenaries of these Israelites went and fought with the Assyrians against the Medes. Sometimes they fought with the Medes against the Assyrians. They even helped Nebuchadnezzar. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But from that area, they become mercenaries, and then groups of them start to move. Like I said, some go east, some go west, some go north and west, in all different areas in there, and they become the Scythians and the Sumerians, those Israelites. And we know exactly what they do. They go all the way across Northwest Europe, to Northwest Europe and the British Isles, across the top of the Mediterranean Sea, and all those nations over there, Sweden and Scotland and the British Isles and Norway and Denmark, and they're all Israelite nations. Right? Kind of hard to believe at first, isn't it? So we got to lock that down, see, and that's the main reason that we're even doing this study. See, we have to lock down that information, because once that information is locked down and we know it's true, then we can follow those Sumerians and Scythians in history. We know exactly where they are, what they did, and all of that. And some of your ancestors probably are, you know, which means that we're all descended from the Bible people, okay? Not that that makes us special, it just makes our heritage known. The slave movement in this country, the emancipation movement, whatever you want to call that, is always hooked up with knowing your roots. That's one of the things about the slaves. See, they didn't have their roots anymore. They didn't have a sense of history and where they belonged and everything, and they were easily controlled because of that. Okay? So we can find out where we come from and what that means. Especially if you're a believer, you know, you need to know that stuff. So we have Behistun Rock, which is a Medo-Persian construction, okay, 515 BC. And we have the Assyrian tablets, which come out of Assyria. Okay? Now, the Assyrian Empire is first in line, and then comes the Babylonian Empire, and then comes the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay? It's because of the Medes and the Israelite mercenaries fighting against Assyria that Assyria gets so weak that Babylon can take over. So we have the Babylonian Empire, which doesn't last a whole long time, because Cyrus comes after he welds together all the Persians and the Medes into one big group. He comes over and he conquers Babylon. Right? The Assyrians come first, and they, in their library, talk about the same people that the Behistun Rock talks about. People that lived in a certain area that were warring and doing certain things, and then we come along 100 years later or so, and we got the Medes conquering that same area where the Israelites were taken to. So we make that connection. Layard, Layard, dug up Nineveh and the Royal Library in 1847. An Englishman, that's important. And Behistun Rock was not discovered. It was there, you know, since 515 BC is where it's dated. It was taken on as a project by Henry Rawlinson in about 1840. I think it was 1840 was the 1840. 47 was Behistun. I mean. I think, remember I said I've got a topo map here that I want to show you of that same area, okay? And you notice now, here's the Caspian Sea, there's the river Gozan coming out here, and Hala and Habor are at there, and that's where the Israelites were placed by Assyria, okay? And the Medes are down in here, okay? But look at all these mountains, how thick that range is all the way through there. Pretty tough to get an army through that kind of thing. So my educated guess is that anybody who wanted to get into the Fertile Crescent would go with an army, would go around the top where it's thinner, come around here like Lake Van, and here's Lake Urmia, which may be mentioned in one of the tablets that we're going to read later on. But also I want you to notice that, see, Babylon is down here, but these two red spots here, these two red spots are Ecbatana, and here's Behistun. See, the rock is there, and Ecbatana is the old capital of Persia. We'll get to that. So there's the topo map of the whole area. Just, okay. Behistun Rock. Before we get into E. Raymond Capt, here's an artist's drawing that I got off the internet, which kind of shows you what's going on there. See, there's Behistun Rock sitting all by itself. But there's the inscription. Well, it's not an inscription. It's a big bas-relief. We'll get into the description of that pretty quick. Well, I might as well do some of that now. There's going to be some repeat here, but it'll help reinforce what's going on here. Okay, so you've got the rock face that's chiseled out, and here's some photographs of it. Here's from down below looking up. Okay, and here's another one from one side looking that way. That's a pretty good one. These are real small images that I got off of the internet. And you can also do a Google Earth and find Behistun Rock, but you can't see any of the inscription. And then here's the whole thing from the other side. But these are not all the writings. Okay, this is just the bas-relief. Okay. You see there's the king there. See, he's twice as big as everybody else, and here's a couple of his servants. Here's another one of the king. But I want you to notice the king, he's got his kingly robes and everything, but he's got his foot on this guy. There's his arm sticking up there. He's got his foot on his chest. See? Here's another picture that's a little bit better to see. The main thing I want you to see in this picture is that first of all, there's these 9 guys are standing up and one down here. That makes 10. You notice all their hands are tied behind their backs, right? And if you look real close, you can see a rope that goes between the necks of all of them. They're all tied together with a rope. Okay, and their hands are behind their back. They're conquered, right? Okay, well, from the photos, we can tell that they're not kings, are they? Look at the dress on those. See? They don't look like kings. They're dressed more like peasants, okay? Not with kingly robes and all that, and crowns or anything like that. So they're not kings. They're not dressed like kings. But who builds commissions a big construction like this for conquering a bunch of peasants? Okay, so they're not strictly peasants, but they're not kings either. Also, if you notice, they can't all be from one tribe. Okay, they're all dressed in different ways. You know, some have hats, some have beards, some have long robes, some have short. You know, they're all different. This guy over here is mentioned in one of the tablets. In one of the inscriptions. They have a pointy hat, which is a Hebrew kind of headdress, anyway. And notice that over each one of these guys is a little blurb. Okay, each one of them has his own little blurb about who they are and where they came from and all that. And that's where we find out that these are the leaders, the elders. They're not the elders of one tribe, all dressed different, but they're the elders of the different tribes of Israel. They're maybe the chiefs or the sub-chiefs of the tribes of Israel. Okay? And when we go to the text, we find out that the word Cana is used and Armenia is used. We'll get to that in a minute too. That's exactly where the Israelites came from, the land of Canaan. Okay? Okay, 10 tribes of Israel. All right, I've got one other. There's a closer shot. A little bit closer shot. There's the king. The king and the 9 guys, you know, they're out there. There's the king, and there's the captives, okay? And the guy with the pointy hat you can't see because he's way over here somewhere, okay? But you can see that they're tied by the rope with the neck there. You can see that, okay? And this is what the whole thing looks like. This is artist rendering, but it shows you what the whole thing is like up there. Okay. Now remember, this rock face is perpendicular to the ground, okay? And you look up here, you see this guy is on the ladder over here. He's on the ladder. That's supposed to be Rawlinson. He's deciphering all the writing, okay? There's no place to stand there. They must have hung ropes down, and I mean, they chiseled out the whole face of this thing. You know how big this thing is? It's 300 feet off the ground in the first place, okay? They couldn't put a long ladder up there. 300 feet off the ground. It's 150 feet wide. 150 feet wide and 100 feet tall. That's bigger than a half a football field. See? And if that's the case, then the king is 25 feet tall. Okay? This is a huge thing. All right? Now, the writings line up like this. There's the picture, and these 2 big faces over here contain the Babylonian language. Here's the Elamite language, these 3, and then here's the Persian language over here, and then there's a bunch of supplemental text it says over here. Plus, remember all those writings that are over the names, I mean over the heads of each one of those conquered leaders. Okay? So let me get Raymond Capt's book here. Raymond Capt, page 130. Missing links discovered in Assyrian tablets. E. Raymond Capt. Okay? A really, really good book on the lost tribes in general. Brings a lot of stuff in here, you know, heraldry of the tribes, all kinds of different facets, and Behistun Rock, because Behistun Rock is just a wonderful confirmation, see, and it shows us what happened. Okay? The old caravan road from Babylon to Ecbatana, ancient capital of Median, runs by a limestone mountain rising out of the plain to a height of 1,700 feet. About 300 feet above the base, on the perpendicular side, is a rock face containing an inscription made by the order of Darius the Great, about 515 BC. The inscription not only fixes the date of his reign, but provides some interesting references to the so-called lost tribes of Israel. The memorial measures about 150 feet long by 100 feet high. Okay? The labor of preparing and polishing the mountainside on a sheer cliff must have been a painstaking task. Where the rock, get this, where the rock was defective or unsound, pieces were filled in and secured with molten lead. Hey, the king could do that, you know. He's the king of the world. The inscriptions are in 3 languages. I showed you that. Babylonian, Elamite, and Persian. They were chiefly in the cuneiform, wedge-like characters. I've got one of these here. This shows you what cuneiform looks like. You want to try and decipher something like this? Look at that. You see those letters? Each one of those little groups of wedge-shaped arrow points are letters, right? How do you figure out what that means? Okay. While many scholars should be recognized for their efforts towards solving the puzzle of the wedge-shaped script, a young English officer, remember, Layard is an Englishman, a young English officer in the Persian army, he was in the Persian army. So the Persians didn't do this, see? Well, I mean, it was in their land. Be sensible for them to be, but it just happened to be, coincidentally, a Persian, an English officer. Henry C. Rawlinson, 1840, is given credit for successfully deciphering the old Persian signs. The trilingual inscription on what today is known as Behistun Rock provide a key. Once it was determined that the text of the three languages, the story, was identical, okay, it was only a matter of time till scholars were able to read the Elamite and Akkadian languages also. Just like the Rosetta Stone. The hieroglyphics from Egypt were just picture things, picture writings. No, it's an alphabet. But nobody knew that until somebody discovered the Rosetta Stone and deciphered it. Okay. 30, well wait, I skipped a page here. There's 39, all right. Here's the description again, okay? The dominant figure of the Behistun Rock inscriptions is the King Darius in royal attire and surrounded by captives. Around the captives are 5 main panels, 20 in all. The first panel contains 19 paragraphs and 96 lines. Each paragraph commences with the words, I am Darius, the King of Kings, King of Persia. Second panel is 16 paragraphs and 96 lines, and over each is a brief history of the man and the tribe he represents. See, this isn't guesswork that those are the 10 tribes. Okay? The 10th panel is most interesting to a Bible student because it speaks of Sarokas, the Sakan, S-A-C-A-N, Sarokas the Sakan, who has a Hebrew form of headdress. That's the guy with the pointy hat at the end. Okay, Sarokas the Sakan. Okay, so he's a Saka. Okay. Most noteworthy is King Darius, majestically standing before 9 persons united by a rope around their necks and their hands fastened behind their backs. A 10th man is prostrate on his back. The right foot of the king is on his body. No 2 prisoners are dressed alike. Some of them have short tunics, others have long flowing robes. They are evidently the head chiefs of the 10 tribes of Israel. And here's the big proof of that. The word Cana, K-A-N-A, occurs 28 times in the inscription. And the word Armenia, we know where that is, Armenia, also occurs frequently. Okay? This is the area where the prisoners from the house of Israel were taken. The very area where the 10 tribes of Israel had been placed by the Assyrians. By this time, we got the right page here? By this time, about 517 BC, a branch of the Gamir, well, wait a minute. The inscriptions include a list of 23 nations over whom Darius rules. The name of these are, and named among these are the Sakas, S-A-K-K-A-S, Sakas. And you remember on that first chart that I showed you, the Saka were the ones that went up around the Caspian Sea and up in the north, and then went west from there. Sakas. In both the Persian and Elamite versions, the original word is Saka, S-A-K-K-A. But in the Babylonian version, different language, different people. Babylonian version, the same people are called Jimiri. G-I-M-I-R-I. Jimiri. Okay? And this proves that the Assyrians and the Babylonians called the Israelite exiles Jimiri, or Jimiri, regardless of where they lived. Okay? It also indicates that by this time, in 517 BC, a branch of the Jimiri, called the Sakas by the Persian, had already migrated a long way beyond Bactria and dwelt in the eastern extremity of the Persian Empire. Now, he talked about that earlier, but where that places them is 500 to 600 miles east of the Caspian Sea. Way, way east. They spread way out. Okay? There were millions of them. They had to. In another inscription written in a gold tablet, about a foot square, Darius, the same guy, wrote, "This kingdom I hold is from Saka." Saka. They were established there for almost 200 years before they were conquered by the Medes, okay? Because the Babylonians were in charge for quite a while, the Assyrians were in charge for quite a while, and the Medes were Johnny-come-latelys. Okay? So by the time they got there, it was the land of Saka. Okay? Okay? I hold is from Saka, which is beyond Sogdiana to Cush, that's Ethiopia, and from India to Sardis. See, this provides the evidence that by 500 BC, some of the Sakas were far to the east near the upper Jakartas Basin, way up over by Afghanistan. Okay? Additional evidence that the Saka were a branch of the Jimiri, in other words, Israelites, is provided by another trilingual inscription found in the tomb of Darius in southwest Persia. Darius listed 3 separate groups of Sakas. Okay? In other words, the Sakas were these huge, huge group with tribes in between. Okay? Made up of tribes. The whole group is Sakas, or Jimiri, depending on what language you use. Right? Darius listed 3 separate groups of Sakas: the Amerindian Sakas, the Sakas with pointed hats, remember that guy, pointed hat, and the Sakas who are beyond the sea. And in each case, the name Jimiri is in the Babylonian text, and it's translated Saka in the Persians. Okay? So the Israelites get deported. They're placed up in the northern area there, and they're not called Israelites anymore. They're called Jimiri, Gamira, a bunch of different spellings, or the Saka, or the Iskuza, which we'll get to. A lot of different names, but none of the names that they called themselves. They called themselves either the house of Israel, and they often used the house of Isaac, which you'll find prophesied that they'd call themselves by the name of Isaac. Okay? These inscriptions have been known for many years, but the publications dealing with them has generally been passed over the translation of Jimiri to Saka with scarcely a comment. Perhaps the conclusion can be drawn from the inscriptions, also the writings of Josephus, is that the Iskuza, I just mentioned those, the Iskuza were called Saka by the Persians. So that's a smaller group of the Saka, or the Saka themselves, by the Persians. Therefore, the logical conclusion is that the Iskuza, the Saka, and the Jimiri are the same people. Okay. Then, in reviewing the royal correspondence of the Assyrian Empire, it is evident that the Iskuza, the Saka, the Scythians, the Sumerians, and the Jimiri are all Israelites. They're all Israelites. And we'll get some more confirmation of that with the Assyrian tablets, okay, which we're about to take a look at here. Let's see. State and alignment and transcript. Here's a little map. A couple little maps, topographical maps. Again, here's the Fertile Crescent. That's the mainstay of the Assyrian Empire. They took Israel away, put them up in here underneath the Caspian Sea. Okay, the Medes are down on the other side over here, and let's see, we've got Nineveh here. Where's Nineveh? Oh, I can't find it. It's backwards to me here. Oh, I see. That's the map of the early history of the time. Okay, here's the lower map that shows the later history, and you see Nineveh here. There's Lake Van, Lake Urmia. Here's Haller, Heba, and the River Gozan, the Medes, and the Assyrian in the Fertile Crescent here. Okay, well, in this area right up here, this at that time was known as the land of Urartu. Urartu. Let me see. I've got a different map here that I want to show you on that. Ashcard, Urartu. Where's Urartu here? I thought I had that in a place where you could see it, but it's on a different map. That's where it is. It's on a different map. But this whole area up in here was the land of Urartu. It's where the Urartians lived, okay? And the Urartians were a people by themselves, but they were a vassal state for the Assyrians, okay? A vassal state. Okay, let's take a look at some of the tablets. I've got a couple of shots here of many of the tablets that we're going to talk about. It's kind of what they look like here, all with the cuneiform writing on them. Okay. I mean, it's really just a kind of a jumble of dots. But here's a blow up of one of them. You can't see the actually writing. Okay, you can't actually see the writing, but there it is. That's not too bad a picture. These came out of Raymond Capp's book. Okay. What is this? This is tablet letter number 492. You notice up here. Okay, what does Cap say? Page 99 it is, isn't it? 99. One summer day. You got a snack? One summer day in 1847, Layard drove his spade into a mound at Kayungjuk, and struck the buried walls of the Assyrian palace. He had found Sennacherib's splendid palace and the famous capital of Assyria. Quote, Nineveh, that great city. That's what it says in the Bible. Which had seemingly miraculously survived the centuries nearly intact. In two small rooms, Layard found stores of clay tablets inscribed all over with the curious Assyrian arrow-headed writing, which we now call cuneiform writing. Later, his assistant, Mr. Rassand, found another cache of these tablets, and when scholars later found out how to read the inscriptions on the tablets, it was discovered that these clay tablets were really the books of the great royal library of the Assyrian kings. Over 23,000 cuneiform tablets were found, whole or broken. These were shipped to the British Museum and for translation and study, and the writings included Royal Library, okay, you'd expect that out of the Royal Library, astronomical books, observations of the planets, mathematical calculations, medical prescriptions, religious texts, business documents, historical records of the different reigns of the kings, and personal correspondence of the kings. The earliest of these cuneiform tablets, known as the Royal Letters, are reports dated 708 and 707 BC. Now, let me stop here and remind you that King Sargon of the Assyrians was the second or third king to do the conquering of the whole house of Israel. But he conquered Samaria. And you can find this, just go on the internet and look for Sargon and Samaria, and you'll find where he has an inscription that we can read that says that I conquered Samaria in 721 is the date, okay? 721 isn't very long. It isn't very long until 708, less than 20 years after they're conquered. And they started the conquering in 745. See? So a lot of people are up there in that area already. And the Urartians, again, is a vassal state. And now you've got these millions of Israelites, okay? Reports dating from 708, 787 BC from spies operating on the border between Assyria and Urartu. Okay? The spies were evidently sent there by the Assyrian monarch to watch and report on Urartian activities. It's from their reports that the activities of the Israelites can be found. Okay? Remember the name Gamir and Saka and Sake, Iskuza? Okay, keep those in mind. One tablet is identified as letter 123, 123, Gabuana Ashur to King Sargon. And it reads as follows. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but it says, to the king my lord, your servant Gabuana Ashur, in regard to the orders which the king my lord issued to me, go do this stuff, okay? Concerning the watch of the people of the land of Urartu. Okay? My messengers are entered into the city of Kerban. They go on a bunch of other things about the Urartians. The main thing I want you to notice here, or remember, is that the king commissioned spies to go and report on the movements of these Urartians. Okay? Again, remember the Urartians were up in that area where they could come right down on top of the Assyrians. Okay? The Medes are over under here, and then you get to the Urartians, and then we go right down into the Assyrians. So on the border there between Urartu and Assyria, they got the spies, and they're writing back. Okay? At one point, Sargon, his son, Sennacherib, and your Bible students know about Sennacherib. He's the one that laid siege to Jerusalem, okay, and got in trouble with God, and 180 of his 80,000 of his troops were killed in one night, and he turned around and went back home. And essentially that was the end of the turning point of the Assyrian Empire. And that defeat allowed Babylon to take the fore. But where was I? Sennacherib. Sennacherib is Sargon's son, and he's up there supervising the intelligence network, okay? And he writes to him and he says, there's some stuff happening and I'll tell you about it later. And this letter is a follow-up to that. The following letter, number 197, Sennacherib to King Sargon, appears to be a follow-up report. To the king, my lord, your servant Sennacherib. May it be well with the king, my lord. And he gives him a bunch of compliments. And then he goes on to say, the people of Ukai have sent word unto me, saying, when the king of the people of Urartu went into the land of Gamir. Does that sound like anything Gamiri? Went into the land of Gamir, his army met with a debacle. And himself and his district commanders with their contingents have been hurled back. And he talks a bunch about the battle and the conflict there. But then again he repeats and he says, they replied saying, when he went to the land of Gamir, his army met with a debacle. 3 of his officers together with their troops were slain. He himself escaped and entered into his own land, back into Urartu. Okay, his camp has not yet been attacked. Then it says a few more things. Now remember the geography, okay? Because Urartu was above Assyria. But we got to remember where the Medes were too, okay? Because this is Urartu. The Medes are down here, okay? Who's down over here? Assyria. Well, where's the land of Gamir? Okay? Urartu didn't go this way. They must have gone this way, into the land of Gamir, wherever that is. You know, I mean, why it's called Gamir now. And we'll clarify that in just a minute or two. Okay? So Urartu went on an expedition into the land of Gamir. Now it doesn't say they fought with the Gamir or the Gamira. It says they went to the land of Gamir, which means they did. But it doesn't say that. But the land is called after some people. What do we got here? Is that 1:15? Okay. Letter 197 and 646 identifies the area of the disastrous rout of the Urartians as the land of Gamir. Okay? Since the area was southeasterly of Urartu, that's what I showed you, this would place it in the territory of the Manai. Not the Gamir, not the Jimmery, but the Manai. Okay? Land of the Manai. A kindred people ruled over by the Urartians. Okay? Manai and the Urartians are kind of together. Different groups, but together. Okay? This area south of Lake Urmia and adjacent to Media, referred to as the land of Gamir, was where a large number of the 10 tribes of northern kingdom of Israel had been placed by the Assyrians. And just 14 years prior to the battle, some of the Israelites from the 2-tribed southern kingdom of Judah had been settled in that area also. Sargon, in his annals, says that he invaded this area, the area of the Manai, in 719 BC, and deported, same drill, deported many of the Manai to the west to Syria. See, that's where the Samaritans come from. The Samaritans, the Good Samaritan, the Samaritan woman by the well, the Jews hated the Samaritans. Why? Well, because they were acting like phony Jews. They got put down in there by the Assyrians, and they adopted a kind of a perverted form of Mosaic law, Judaism, and were trying to be wannabe Jews. That's what the Jews looked at them as, and they hated that. You know, they were foreigners in the first place. You know, those guys out of here. Evidently, this created a sparsely populated area in where the homeless Israelites would have filled. For self-preservation, the Israelites would have resisted any intrusion by the Urartians, thus proving the practicability of the Assyrian defensive strategy of placing captive peoples as buffer states on their borders. Letter 112. This is really interesting, see, because this isn't 1200 AD, okay? This is 500 BC. Well, earlier than that, okay? This is 680, 700 BC. Arad's sin to the overseer of the palace reveals the names of the inhabitants of Gamir as the Gamera, Gamera, spelled a couple of different ways depending on which side of the river you live on, right? And further identified them as Sumerians. Sumerians. And that's in quotes. It's spelled Gamera Aan. Gamera Aan. Gamera Aan. Okay? To the overseer of the palace, my lord, your servant Arad sin. The Sumerians went forth. There it is, right there, the Sumerians, okay? The Sumerian, all we have to do is tie the Jimera, the Gamera, the Iskuza, and the Saka to the Sumerians. The Sumerians went forth from the midst of Manai. From the midst of the Manai. We know where the Manai are. They're down there underneath the Caspian Sea, right where the Israelites were. The Urartians are above them. Manai are there with them, but they're separate peoples. And where did the Sumerians go? They went forth from the Manai. From the Manai. Into the land of Urartu. Now, this wasn't the Urartians coming down. This was the Sumerians. The Iskuza, the Jimera, the Gamera going up into Urartu. Okay? And there's a little bit more on that, but we're not going to read the rest of that letter. In captivity, the Israelites were renamed Jimera, Gamera, and finally Sumerians. Although the Jimera were occupying part of the land of the Medes and Menai, they were a distinct people. Here's some more about that. The kings would pray to the gods, and they'd have their prayers written down on tablets, okay? Sometimes gold plates. So the tablets contain prayers, okay? And in one prayer tablet indicates that such an alliance. Oh no, wait. Esarhaddon wants to make a deal with a guy named Castoridi, okay, chieftain of the city of Carcassus. Okay. Well, another prayer tablet says, evidently the treaty didn't work out, indicates that such an alliance did take place. No, it did take place. Okay, because it says here, it says, will Castoridi, together with his warriors, or the warriors of the Jimera, or the warriors of the Medes, or the warriors of the Manai. If all of those are the same people, why call them different names? Right? All different reasons. And just in case he doesn't leave anybody out, he says, and any other enemy whatsoever, as there may be, succeed in their plan. Okay? The above prayer indicates that the Jimera were separate, but had joined with the Medes and the Manai under this Castoridi guy against Assyria. As I said before, they fought with whoever they felt like, how many ever times they wanted to, switch sides didn't make any difference. They were mercenaries. An analysis of the texts of the royal letters leads only to the conclusion that the Gamir were part of the Israelites lost in the Assyrian exile. However, the Gamir people, identified in the royal letters, fail to account for a greater number of the Israelites of the 10 northern tribes of Israel, plus large numbers of the southern kingdom of Judah carried into Assyrian captivity. What happened to them? The answer to the question is found in the prayer tablets of the Assyrian king Esarhaddon. Now we got 3 different confirmations of this name change going on here, that we can connect up the Israelites to the Scythians and the Sumerians. Okay? What more proof could you have? Okay? And you can't argue with this and say, well, I think this means, it says right there what the name is. Among the prayer tablets of Esarhaddon to the sun god Shamash are several that name a people never heard before in history. Iskuza, who evidently lived among the Ammonai. Right? One prayer text reads, will the Iskuza warriors who live in the district of the Mannai, okay, and have moved to the frontiers of the Mannai succeed in their plan? And then it goes on, and let's see, the towns, the Urartians battled the Gamir in 707 BC at the border of the Mannai kingdom. Right? 2 other prayer tablets. Do I want to do both of those? No, I don't want to do that, just this one here. Among the prayer tablets or any Assyrian records where the Gamir or the Iskuza are mentioned, they are never described as being distinctly different people. In fact, the name Iskuza can easily be deduced from the name Isaac. Iskuza. Okay? Isaac could easily take the form of Isaka, and we'll see that in a minute too, which easily turns into Iskuza, maybe when the Assyrians heard it. Okay? As the Medes stepped up their harassment on the border provinces of Assyria, Esarhaddon proposed an alliance with Iskuza king Bartatua. But in Greek, his name is Prototheus. And he's listed in Herodotus. The same guy, different names. See, that's the problem. You have 3 or 4 different languages that are naming this same group of people by different names, and if you're not really careful and know about this, that they cross over, you think they're different groups of people. Historians forever have said that they probably came, when they're talking about the Scythians, well, they must have came. We don't have any solid evidence, but they must have come from over east in Russia and wound up on the steppes above the Caucasus Mountains. No, that's guesswork. Okay? Wait a minute, where were we here? 20. Oh, that was the alliance. Okay. Remember, Protothees. Okay. Well, the Scythian alliance proved successful and lasted at least for another generation, for Herodotus relates that a Scythian army under the command of Medes, the son of Protothees, okay, that's Barbatua, the guy that the Israelite, okay, came to the relief of Nineveh. Again, about 645 BC, Medes fought for the Assyrians, this time against the Sumerians. Right? Mercenaries. But they're all Israelites. Right? Now, it's universally accepted by modern historians that the name Iskuza, those people called Shuthae, Shuthae, a Greek name, Shuthae, the people of Shuth, whatever. That was by the Greeks. And Sake, S-A-C-A-E, Sake, also Saka, by the Persians. And in one place they're called Saka Sunni, sons of Saka, sons of Isaac. Okay? And Saka Sunni goes right away into Saxon. That's where the Saxons come from. Okay? The Saxons. Herodotus further tells us that the Persians called the Sake Scythians. Scythians. Why? Not because they lived up in Scythia yet. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that wasn't. Because it's a name that means wanderer, nomadic existence. They didn't establish big towns and things. When Darius in another place tried to go and conquer above the Caucasus Mountains into Scythia and conquer all of Scythia, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it because he'd move his army into position and the Scythians would just jump in their wagons and take their flocks and they'd split. See, he'd have to do it all over again. He got tired of following them around. He went home because he couldn't conquer them because they were nomads. And Skuthe comes from Sukkoth. Skuth in Hebrew, that's a booth. Okay, it means a booth. It's what they do in the feast of Sukkoth, tabernacles. They take a temporary bunch of branches off the tree and make a little house for themselves outside to remember that they lived in the wilderness at one time. Skuth, booth, becomes Scythian. Simple. The name Jimra is strictly an Assyrian name. Okay? You know that. And not one that the Israelites would have used, as I said before. All right, it's got a little summary here. To summarize, we've observed that the Assyrian documents, tablets, inscriptions, and so forth, that the Israelites were called Qumri. Now, we didn't talk about that, but that's earlier on. Qumri. I guess I better explain Qumri to you. Qumri is spelled here Khumri. Qumri. That's because that's the Assyrian word for Omri that we have in the Bible, O-M-R-I. Who was Omri? He was the 6th king of the northern nation of Israel. After the split, he was the 6th king. And he moved the capital to Samaria, made up a whole bunch of new laws, and became a very prominent king. So they could call it the land of Omri, just like we could call it the land of Washington or the land of Lincoln. Okay? Omri. So these Assyrians, before they even came and conquered the Israelite, the house of Israel, they called them Qumri. Oh, those are the guys from Qumri. Umri. Okay? They were called Qumri by the Assyrians before their captivity. However, after the reign of Sargon II, he's the guy who finished it off as far as the house of Israel in 721, the name is never mentioned again. They don't call him Qumri anymore. What do they call him? Jimri and Gamira. Then around 707 BC, a people known as the Gamira or the Gamera are recorded as living among the Mannai. Their territory is only a few miles from the Medes, in the very areas where the scriptures state that the northern 10-tribe kingdom of Israel had been placed just a few years previously. And we've noted that the names Gamir, Gamira, Gamera could easily be corruptions of Qumri, the Assyrian names for the Israelites. The names Sake and Saka, or Scythians in parentheses he's got here, are probably derived from Isaka, or house of Isaac. And it's further noted that the Assyrian name Gamira is translated into Kamirioi, Greek, and then Sumerian in English. Although the belief based upon biblical and historical records, that the Scythians and the Sumerians are descendants of the lost tribes of Israel has been held by many Bible scholars for a long time. Archaeological evidence has been lacking. But that's no longer the case. The clay cuneiform letters found in Ashurbanipal's Royal Library at Kuyunjuk are the missing links, and Behistun Rock, concerning the Israelites and the peoples of Western Europe and America, who trace their roots back to the Scythians and the Sumerians, which practically all of us do. Okay? So now it can truly be said archaeology has solved two great mysteries, both occurring at the same time in history. And this is one of the weird parts that we didn't talk a lot about. See? First mystery, what happened to the countless thousands, millions of Israelites that, quote, disappeared in the Assyrian captivity? Whew. They just got assimilated into, that's what some people have to say because they don't know about this connection. Oh, they just got assimilated into the, we lost, they're gone forever. God wouldn't let them go forever. Come on. He promised he wouldn't. The second mystery, where did the countless thousands, millions, of Scythians and Sumerians come from? You see, you got this huge group of people that land in this area, and then we never hear about them anymore. And then we got this huge group of people that come out of that same area and do other things. Well, as Dr. Scott used to say, there must have been the most horrific war in history by the collision of these two millions of groups of people, or they're the same. Of course they're the same. Both mysteries no longer resist. The so-called lost tribes of Israel were never really lost. They only lost their identity during their captivity in Assyria. Simple. The lost tribes, the house of Israel, were taken by the Assyrians up into Haller, Heba. The river goes on. And we've seen that those same Israelites became known as, not Israelites anymore, but the Saka, the Sake, the Jimra, Gamra, Iskuza. And those same Jimra, Saka, Iskuza, became the Sumerians and the Scythians. See, when you move into English, it's the same people, it's just a different name. Looks like there's different people. And we know what happened to the Sumerians and the Scythians. That's factual history that we can trace all the way back to that time, 700 BC. See? We know what happened to them. They became the nations of the British Isles in Northwest Europe, and eventually America, Australia, the Commonwealth. What's really too bad is that pastors and teachers don't, and some won't. They just won't accept this. They just, no. I mean, heavy Bible scholars, respected teachers, say, well, that's just a myth. That didn't... I mean, how can you refute Behistun Rock and the Assyrian tablets and this name change and all that we've just gone through? It's all the same, But they won't. The Lost Tribes teaching is one sure way. It's one of the very sure ways to prove God's reality. Don't we have to really know that God is real? We can't just guess about it. If we guess about it, we're going to be making up our own religion. We're not going to be doing what the Bible says we're supposed to be doing. We're not going to be trusting God with our lives. We're going to go along with what saves our bacon. Okay? In order to establish a true Christian lifestyle, We have to give up our self-control. We have to depend on something other than ourselves, God, and what He says. And the only way we can find that is not by sitting out on a rock on the hill and wondering what God wants us to do or tells us He will do or what He is or any of that. We can only go one place, and that's the Bible. Now, some people don't want to believe that we can trust what it says in the Bible. But I can show you in 2 or 3 or 4 hours the supernatural qualities of the Bible that can't be reproduced by human effort. And yet, humans wrote down all this stuff. Okay? How did Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah know all the prophecies that they prophesied would come true? We know they did. There's hundreds of prophecies for the lost tribes that already came true, are fulfilled. See? But if you don't have the historical background and you don't know who the people are and you can't look it up, how are you going to know that God made the statement in the first place, told the future, and said, I'm going to do this, and then it happened? Jeremiah didn't make that happen, okay? Jeremiah didn't make a new covenant that was based on Christ coming. Isaiah wasn't involved in the first advent of Jesus. God only opened a little window and showed him what was going to happen, and then he wrote it down. Okay? And that doesn't even speak to all the numerical schemes that are listed in the Bible. Get behind the original language, and there's number scheme after number scheme that proves you can't make this stuff up. You know, God had to be involved. And if He's involved that way, then we can believe that He's real. And then we can say, well, if He's real, what did He say for us? Well, He said He'd protect you. He said He'd heal you. He said He'd provide all your needs. You wouldn't have to worry about a roof over your head, shelter, clothing, food. You'd have everything you need. Not the stuff you want, the stuff you need. Okay? A lot of the stuff you want too, but mostly what you need. He's promised all of that. You can believe that. So when it comes time to tithe, you can tithe. You don't have to worry about all that money that you could buy a brand new car with in 2 years or 3 years. You know? Faithing is what the lost tribes does for you. It proves God, proves His reality and His faithfulness to keep His word to help us. And then we can step out, put our toe in the water and say, okay, I'm doing it your way, God. And if He doesn't come through, go to Vegas. It's all right, But faithing is where it's at. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope that now you can go through the Bible, and every time you see a prophecy in the Old Testament that lists any of the names for the house of Israel, there's 7 or 8 of them, Ephraim, Samaria, the house of Israel, the house of Isaac, the house of Joseph, Israel, sometimes all by itself. You're going to find, if you take those names and put a little line through it and put on top of it B/US. Okay? Britain and the United States. And then go to your school book history remembrance. Stuff that you had in school, in grammar school, and high school, about who did things in the world. Okay? And you're going to find that those prophecies to the house of Israel were fulfilled by England, Northwest Europe, and the United States. A company of nations. A great nation, greater than any other nation in the world in history. Different prophecies to Abraham that his descendants would possess the gates of their enemies. World trade access points would be possessed by Israelites. Well, all we have to do is look at who possesses those gates, and then we'll know who the Israelites are, aren't we? Panama, Gibraltar, Suez, Cape of Good Hope, Cape Horn, Hong Kong, on and on. I hope that you'll be able to start now some of your own research. Go through the Bible, do that substitution, and you'll find out that scholars have said that 5/7 of the Bible's information depends on knowledge of the lost tribes, and you can't even understand Jesus properly unless you know about the lost tribes, because he said he was come for the house of Israel. What are you going to do with that? Huh? Oh, well, we're all seed of Abraham because we're believers. Well, that's true in a spiritual sense, but God wasn't talking about spiritual when he said that Abraham, your descendants, are going to be the possessors of the gates of their enemies. That wasn't spiritual. That's factual stuff. Thanks again for watching. And see you next time, huh? God bless.